Imagine a hurricane parked offshore for 52 straight days, with no one having any idea when it's going to leave. From land, we can see the oil hurricane out there, the oil being spewed toward us in slow motion. We know it's coming. But can we do anything about it? Do we just have to watch helplessly as it hits shore? As it hits not only beaches, which at least conceivably can be cleaned, but as it also hits wetlands and mud flats and grassy islands that can really never be properly cleaned. It's not like we haven't had plenty of advance warning that it's coming. When we know the oil is coming at specific places on the American coast, can we stop it? We should be able to, but apparently we can't. At least we can't in Alabama, in Orange Beach, where locals have been watching the oil offshore for weeks, knowing it was heading their way, trying to come up with ways to stop it. Yesterday, the oil won. It came through Perdido Pass, and it did this to Orange Beach, to Terry Cove, and to Bayou St. John, and to Cotton Bayou. We knew where it was heading. We had weeks of advance notice. There is technology to divert and contain and remove oil from the water in specific areas. It's not great technology, but there is technology. But apparently we, the United States of America, do not have the will or the coordination or the manpower or the leadership to pull something like this off, to pull off protecting part of America we knew was going to get hit by oil we knew was coming, that we had weeks to prepare for. Everybody's really focused on how much oil is still pumping out of the seabed, out of that riser pipe. I get it. But there is oil in the water already, tens of millions of gallons, and we are doing a disgracefully bad job keeping that oil offshore and getting it out of the water. The technology to deal with the oil that's already in the water is not great technology. The oil industry has been letting the cleanup field rot for decades. But the tech we do have was probably enough to save Orange Beach in Alabama, and we blew it. We blew it this week. Which other coastal town is next? Joining us now is the mayor of Orange Beach, Alabama, Tony Kennon. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time, sir. I am very sorry about the oil that has hit your town.
Thank you, Rachel. We greatly appreciate y'all's concern. Can I say something?
Can you walk me through what was... Sure, please go ahead, sir.
The Republicans, I'm a conservative. The Republican senator that said that this wasn't an environmental disaster is a complete fool. He needs to come down and take a swim off Louisiana's coast if it's not a disaster. But go ahead. I thought I'd make a comment.
No, please. I'm happy to hear it, and I'm sure you know I agree with you on that. In terms of what's happened in Orange Beach, I'd love it if you could just tell us what has happened locally when you knew that oil was offshore and you were trying to prevent what's since happened. What kind of information were you getting? What were your plans for trying to stop it?
Well, unfortunately, locals, we have absolutely zero control over the process and what's going on. That is completely within BP's purview. But for 5 weeks, we had been watching BP prepare. 2 to 3 weeks ago, I began to start yelling at a fairly high volume that we didn't have enough assets in place to do the job. Not enough skimmers, not enough offshore skimmers, not enough boom. We just wasn't ready. The oil moved in Tuesday evening. I thought we had closed the pass down. The pass is the opening between the Gulf of Mexico and our back bays. 10 o'clock that night, the Coast Guard let me know that they were not going to close down the pass. I asked them to reconsider. They did not. And as a result, between that decision and the ineptitude of the response by BP's contractor and plan, oil moved up 3 to 4 miles up into our back bays.
In terms of the technology that is available to try to have stopped what happened in Orange Beach, I know that it's not great technology. Everybody knows that boom isn't foolproof. But do you feel like it is possible that had it been done right, that the pass could have been protected from the encroachment of that oil, that your back bays could still be clean today?
Right. Well, we know it's a difficult situation because our pass has one of the most the fastest currents of any pass or any outlet on the Gulf. However, booming is a very simplistic approach to blocking the oil. And when you have a simplistic approach, you make up with overwhelming numbers of assets. But when you've got a simplistic approach and underwhelming numbers, that's when you get into trouble. That's the issue. Had we had everything in place that we should have had, I think there would have been a much, much better job of keeping that in place. But there was also a component of disorganization and total malfunction where they continued to open and close the gates for boats to come in and out while we were trying to skim and pick the oil up, which allowed the oil to move out of the containment area into the back bays, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me.
In terms of what your next steps are and what happens now that the oil has come into Orange Beach, has come into these places you did not want it to end up in, is there a plan for cleaning it up, for keeping it from getting worse? Do you feel like any of the disorganization has been overcome by now the urgency of the scenes that we're seeing of the oil in Orange Beach?
Well, BP knows our sense of urgency. We've let them know that, and for 2 days now we've been very much involved in refining the process. They have promised us they're going to have more assets in place. We're predicted to possibly have another infiltration of oil Friday and Saturday. We better be ready. We better have the assets in place. We're looking to add some other strategies that should have already been taking place, but for whatever reason it did not. So we're going to get them in place as soon as we can. I do think there's a little bit better communication now with us, the Coast Guard and BP. But if the assets aren't there to handle and do the job, it's all for naught.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if it helps us to give you a bigger megaphone for that yelling that you're doing, please let us know. It's a small thing that we can offer, but it's sort of all that we can offer at this point.
No. It has made a big difference. It's made a big difference.
Thank you. Mayor Tony Kennon of Orange Beach, Alabama. Good luck to you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Joining us now is Rick Steiner. He is a marine conservationist who is just back from Grand Isle, Louisiana. He was the University of Alaska's marine advisor for the Prince William Sound region of Alaska during the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And he now works on oil spill prevention and response around the world. Rick Steiner, thanks very much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
When I found out this morning what went wrong in Orange Beach, I immediately wanted to ask you what you thought about it in terms of the technological failure here. Was this a matter of the response team not tailoring their response to that specific area? Was it just not enough resources made available? What do you think?
Well, there's a lot to it, certainly. I mean, the number of failures in this whole thing is becoming epic, certainly. But first, I wanted to also underscore what the mayor just said about that. The congressman, the Republican congressman that said that this was not a disaster. That is our congressman from Alaska, and I agree with his characterization, with the mayor's characterization. That is simply one of the most arrogant and ignorant statements I have heard out of the Deepwater Horizon disaster so far. So most people in Alaska get that this is a disaster. So just so the mayor knows that. Now, there are, as you mentioned, there are many things that the responders can do and could have done and still could do to protect Orange Beach and Perdido Bay. And at the very back of the bay, Arnica Bay, there's about 20 female dolphins with their calves right now, nursing calves right down at the back of the bay. That has to be protected. But instead of trying to block off the current, which gets up to 7 or 8 knots through there at maximum tidal flush, they can simply try to encircle oil that's coming in there and go with the flow. Don't try to fight the flow. Just drift with the oil sheens and slicks that are coming into the bay. If they want to do this, they can do it, and then have the skimming assets and sorbent booms put in there to absorb the stuff out of the water. There are ways you can do it. You might not get it all, but they can certainly do a heck of a lot better than just sitting on the beach watching it.
When you talk about understanding those relatively subtle dynamics, at least to those of us who are outside that area, thinking about the rate at which water is coming through that pass, thinking about the specifically vulnerable areas, wildlife vulnerable areas in those back bays, what I'm hearing is the locals need to be involved in planning and carrying out this response because they may know those subtleties best. Is that one of the lessons of what happened with the Exxon Valdez response, that locals need to be involved?
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest failures in this response, the BP response so far, and the unified command. There's no unified command if they don't have local input in that command structure, and they don't. So that's a huge failing here. One of the only things we got right in the Exxon Valdez response is that the local fishing industry was represented in the emergency command team. There were several of us that sat in the command team for several months, telling them what we thought was possible and what we thought was not possible and where we wanted the response assets to go. These folks that live in the parishes in Louisiana and the places like Orange Beach, they know what's possible. They know what the boats can do, where the currents go and such like that, what deserves to be protected and what can't be. And the fact that the responders come in there in this kind of cowboy attitude and start telling the local people what they are going to do, I mean, it's everything's kind of flipped upside down. So that still can be corrected. There needs to be local people involved in the unified command to this thing.
Yeah, and especially considering that this is going to be going on for months.